I won $5 million, but refused to share with my sister. The Fire of Betrayal. In Boise, Idaho, Emily Thompson, 28, held a $5 million lottery check as her father. Richard snatched it, roaring, "No selfish daughter of mine." He burned it before relatives, neighbors, and smug sister Chloe. Emily stayed calm. The check was fake. The real one safe in a bank. Her revenge sparked. The story begins. Everyone, please subscribe to my Sweet Revenge YouTube channel. The Thompson family living room in Boise, Idaho, was a suffocating cage, the air thick with the scent of old coffee and the buzz of greedy anticipation. The faded floral curtains swayed faintly in the evening breeze, doing little to ease the tension that crackled like static electricity. Emily Thompson, 28, stood at the room's center, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles whitened, her pulse roaring in her ears like a distant storm. She clutched a crisp lottery check, her $5 million ticket to freedom, in her trembling fingers. Its weight both a promise and a burden. Around her, a crowd of aunts, uncles, cousins, and nosy neighbors pressed in, their eyes glinting with curiosity and judgment. In the corner, her younger sister, Chloe, leaned against the wall, her blonde hair catching the lamplight, her lips curled in a smug, knowing smirk that screamed victory before the fight had even begun. Richard Thompson, Emily's father, loomed before her, his broad shoulders hunched with fury. His weathered face flushed a dangerous red. His eyes, usually distant, now burned with a rage that made Emily's stomach twist. "You're telling me you won't share this?" he bellowed, snatching the check from her hands with a force that made her flinch. His voice was a sledgehammer, shattering the room's fragile silence. $5 million, Emily, and you're hoarding it like some greedy stranger? Emily's throat tightened, her breath shallow. She'd rehearsed this moment, but the raw venom in her father's voice still stung. "Dad, I never said I wouldn't help," she said, her voice low but steady, fighting to keep her composure. "I just want to use some of it for myself, for my dreams." "Dreams?" Richard spat, holding the check aloft like a prosecutor presenting damning evidence. "What dreams? That little bookstore fantasy of yours? You think that's worth more than your sister's future?" He turned to the crowd, his voice rising, playing to their gasps and murmurs. "This is my daughter. Everyone, too selfish to care about her own family." The room erupted in whispers. A venomous chorus. Aunt Linda, perched on the sagging couch, shook her head, her pearl earrings glinting disapprovingly. "Ungrateful," she muttered, loud enough for Emily to hear. Neighbor Tom, nursing a beer, leaned toward his wife, whispering, "Can you believe her?" Chloe, still in her corner, let out a soft, theatrical sniffle, her blue eyes glistening with crocodile tears. How could you?" she whimpered, her voice dripping with practiced fragility. "I'm your sister. Don't you want me to be happy?" Emily's chest burned, a cocktail of anger and betrayal searing her from within. She locked eyes with Chloe, seeing not her sister but a spoiled princess who'd always got in her way. "I want us both to be happy," Emily said, her voice sharper now, cutting through Chloe's performance. "But this is my win. I get to decide what happens to it." The room froze. Susan, Emily's mother, stepped forward, her floral blouse rumpled, her face a mask of disappointment. "After everything we've done for you," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us? By turning your back on Chloe?" Emily's heart pounded, her vision narrowing. She wanted to scream, to remind them of the years she'd spent invisible, working through college, paying her own rent, swallowing their indifference while they showered Chloe with praise and presents. But before she could speak, Richard's face twisted into something darker. "You're no daughter of mine," he growled, his voice low and final. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a matchbook, and struck a match with a hiss that echoed in Emily's ears. The crowd gasped as the tiny flame flared to life. "Dad, don't," Emily started, but her voice was drowned out by the collective shock as Richard held the match to the check. The paper caught fire instantly, the edges curling black, the numbers, $5.000, dissolving into ash. The room was a cacophony of cries. Aunt Linda shrieked. Tom dropped his beer, and Chloe's smirk widened, her eyes gleaming with triumph. The ashes fluttered to the hardwood floor, a gray snow of shattered dreams. Emily stood rooted, her face a mask of calm despite the chaos. Her heart raced, but not with panic, with purpose. She didn't lunge for the burning paper or beg for mercy. Instead, her green eyes locked on her father's, cold and unyielding, as the last embers died. Because she knew something no one else did. That check was a fake. 3 weeks earlier, Emily had stood in a Boise bank, her hands shaking as she verified her lottery win. $5 million, a fortune that could rewrite her life. She'd secured the real check in a safe deposit box, its code etched into her memory. She'd planned to share the news with her family, hoping for a moment of unity. But their greed had changed everything. The fake check, crafted by a friend at a print shop, was her insurance, a decoy to test their loyalty. And they'd failed spectacularly. As the crowd's whispers turned to shouts, Emily's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "Dad," she said, her voice slicing through the noise like a blade. "You just burned a piece of paper. The real check is safe. And it's mine." Richard's face paled, his hands trembling as the matchbook fell to the floor. Chloe's smirk vanished, her eyes wide with shock. The room fell silent, every eye on Emily, who stood taller now, her fear replaced by a fire of her own. She turned and walked out, the weight of their betrayal fueling her resolve. They thought they'd broken her. They had no idea what was coming. The Thompson family dining room in their modest Boise, Idaho, home was a minefield, its oak table scarred from years of tense meals and unspoken resentments. The chandelier above flickered weakly, casting jagged shadows across the faded wallpaper, as if mirroring the fractured bonds within the room. Emily Thompson, 28, sat at one end, her fingers tracing the rim of a chipped coffee mug, her stomach knotted with a mix of hope and dread. She'd come to share the news of her $5 million lottery win. A beacon of possibility after years of scraping by as a paralegal. Her green eyes, usually bright with determination, flickered with a fragile wish. Maybe, just maybe, this would finally earn her family's respect. Across the table, her parents, Richard and Susan, sat with rigid postures, their faces already tinged with expectation. Richard, a retired mechanic with hands still stained faintly from years of grease, tapped his fork against his plate, the clinking a metronome of impatience. Susan, her auburn hair pulled into a tight bun, adjusted her glasses, her lips pursed as if tasting something sour. At the table's head, Chloe, Emily's 25-year-old sister, lounged with the effortless grace of a queen, her manicured nails glinting as she scrolled through her phone. Her blonde hair cascaded over one shoulder, and her designer blouse, likely paid for by Emily's quiet contributions, screamed privilege. The air was thick, not with warmth, but with the weight of a family that had always chosen one daughter over the other. Emily took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I have news," she began, her words cutting through the clatter of dishes. "I won the lottery, $5 million. The room froze, forks suspended mid-air, eyes snapping to her. For a fleeting moment, Emily's heart lifted. Maybe they'd be proud. Maybe they'd see her. Then Susan's face split into a greedy grin, her eyes gleaming like polished coins. "Oh, Emily, that's incredible," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "You can buy Chloe that condo in downtown Boise. She's been talking about it for months." Emily's hope shattered, her fingers tightening around the mug until it threatened to crack. "What?" she said, her voice low, disbelieving. "Mom, this is my money. I have plans for it." Richard's fork hit the plate with a clang, his jaw tightening. "Plans?" he scoffed, leaning forward, his voice rough as gravel. "What plans? That silly bookstore idea you've been babbling about since high school? You think that's more important than your sister's future?" Chloe looked up from her phone, her blue eyes narrowing, a pout forming on her perfect lips. Seriously?" she said, her voice dripping with mock hurt. "You're sitting on $5 million. And you're not even going to help me? I'm getting married next year. Do you know how expensive a wedding is?" Emily's chest burned, a molten rage bubbling beneath her calm exterior. She'd spent her life in Chloe's shadow, Chloe, the golden child who got private tutors while Emily worked nights to afford community college, Chloe, who got new dresses while Emily wore hand-me-downs, Chloe, whose every whim was indulged while Emily's dreams were dismissed as childish. She'd never asked for much, only fairness, but even that was too much for this family. "I didn't say I wouldn't help," Emily said, her voice taut, each word a struggle to keep from breaking. "I want to open a bookstore, travel, maybe donate to some charities. I'll help where I can. But this is my win. I get to decide. The silence that followed was suffocating. Heavy with judgment, Susan's face twisted, her glasses fogging slightly as she leaned forward. After everything we've done for you? She hissed, her voice low and venomous, like a snake coiling to strike. We raised you, Emily. We sacrificed for you, and now you're turning your back on us? On Chloe? Sacrificed? Emily snapped, her restraint crumbling, her voice rising for the first time. You mean like paying for Chloe's college while I worked 2 jobs to cover mine? Or buying her a car while I took the bus? I've been helping you for years, fixing the roof, paying your medical bills, covering Chloe's credit card when she overspent. And you call me ungrateful? Chloe's eyes widened, her pout morphing into a scowl. She tossed her phone onto the table with a clatter, standing to face Emily, her voice sharp and theatrical. How dare you throw that in our faces, she cried, tears welling up with practiced ease. I'm your sister, Em. Don't you want me to be happy? You're acting like I don't deserve anything. Emily's vision blurred, not with tears but with the red haze of betrayal. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor, her hands trembling with the urge to scream. Deserve? She said, her voice low and dangerous, each word a dagger. I've spent my life watching you get everything while I got scraps. This money is mine, Chloe, not yours, not Mom's, not Dad's, mine. Richard slammed his fist on the table, the dishes rattling, his face purple with rage. Enough, he roared, standing so fast his chair tipped back. You listen to me, Emily. You will give half of that money to Chloe for her wedding and her future. Or you're no daughter of mine. You hear me? Half. Or you're out of this family. The words hit like a physical blow, stealing Emily's breath. She stared at her father, searching for a flicker of the man who'd once taught her to ride a bike. But all she saw was a stranger consumed by favoritism. Susan reached for Chloe's hand, pulling her close, whispering, "Don't worry, sweetheart, she'll come around." Chloe nodded, her tears gone, replaced by a smug glint that made Emily's blood boil. Emily grabbed her coat, her movements sharp, her heart a war zone of hurt and fury. You've made your choice, she said, her voice cold as she turned for the door. And I'm making mine. As she stepped into the chilly Boise night, the stars above seemed to mock her with their indifference. She'd come seeking love, or at least respect, but instead, she'd found greed and ultimatums. Her family had always taken, never given, and now they demanded everything. The $5 million was safe in a bank vault. But something else was growing inside her, a fire. Fierce and unyielding, that would burn brighter than their betrayal. They thought they could bully her into submission. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The Thompson family living room in Boise, Idaho, was a powder keg, the air heavy with the stale scent of cigarette smoke and the electric hum of anticipation. The hardwood floor creaked under the weight of a restless crowd, uncles nursing beers, aunts clutching purses, neighbors craning their necks for a better view. The faded floral curtains hung limp, as if exhausted by the drama unfolding within. Emily Thompson, 28, stood at the room's heart, her pulse hammering like a war drum, her green eyes glinting with a dangerous calm. In her hands, she held a lottery check, a crisp, official-looking document proclaiming her $5 million win. But it was a lie, a meticulously crafted fake, born from a week of planning and a burning need to expose her family's greed. The real check was locked in a Boise bank vault, safe behind a code only she knew. Richard Thompson, her father, paced before her, his weathered face a storm cloud, his hands clenched into fists that trembled with barely contained rage. Susan, her mother, sat on the sagging couch, her auburn bun unraveling, her glasses reflecting the dim glow of a flickering lamp. Beside her, Chloe, Emily's 25-year-old sister, stood with the poise of a pageant queen, her blonde hair gleaming, her lips curled in a smug smirk that screamed triumph. Chloe's fiancé, Ethan, hovered nearby, his polished shoes tapping nervously, his eyes darting between the check and the crowd. Richard had summoned this audience, relatives, friends, even the nosy couple next door, to settle the matter of Emily's lottery win. As if her refusal to hand half to Chloe was a crime to be tried publicly. Show it, Richard growled, his voice rough as gravel, his eyes fixed on the check. Prove you've got the money, Emily, or are you lying to us all? Emily's stomach twisted, not with fear but with a cold, calculating fury. She'd offered to help her family, a little, on her terms, but their ultimatum to split the money with Chloe had shattered any lingering trust. This fake check, printed by a friend at a downtown Boise shop, was her trap, and they were walking right into it. She held it up, the paper catching the light. The crowd's murmurs rising like a swarm of bees. "Here it is," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced with the thrill of deception. $5 million. My win. Chloe's smirk widened, her blue eyes glinting with greed. "God, you're really dragging this out," she said, her voice dripping with mock pity. "Just give me my half, and we can all move on. I've got a wedding to plan. You know." She flipped her hair, glancing at Ethan, who nodded like a trained puppy. Emily's jaw tightened, her fingers itching to tear the check herself. But she held firm. "Your half?" she said, her tone sharp, cutting through Chloe's performance. "I don't recall you buying the ticket, Chloe, or standing in line at the gas station. This is mine." The room buzzed, whispers turning to gasps. Aunt Linda, perched on an armchair, clutched her pearls, muttering, "So selfish." Neighbor Tom leaned toward his wife, his beer sloshing. "She's got some nerve." Susan shot Emily a look of pure venom, her voice low and biting. "Emily, stop this nonsense," she hissed. "You're embarrassing us. Chloe deserves that money. She's starting a family. What do you have? Some pipe dream about books?" Emily's chest burned, a molten rage threatening to spill over. She wanted to scream, to remind them of the years she'd been invisible, paying their bills, fixing their roof, while Chloe got cars and vacations. But she swallowed the words, her plan requiring precision, not passion. "I offered to help," she said, her voice cold as steel. "But half? That's not help. That's theft." Richard's face turned purple, his patience snapping like a brittle twig. "Enough," he roared, lunging forward and snatching the check from her hands. His fingers crumpled the edges, his eyes wild with betrayal. "You think you can stand here, in my house, and spit in our faces? You're no daughter of mine." He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a matchbook, his hands shaking as he struck a match. The tiny flame hissed to life, casting eerie shadows across his furious face. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. "Richard, no," Susan cried, half standing, her glasses slipping down her nose. Chloe's smirk faltered, her eyes widening, though whether from shock or excitement, Emily couldn't tell. Ethan stepped forward, his voice uncertain. "Sir, maybe we should," but Richard silenced him with a glare, holding the check aloft like a condemned man's sentence. "You'd rather hoard this than help your sister?" Richard bellowed, his voice a thunderclap. "Then it's worth nothing." He touched the match to the check, and the paper ignited, flames licking hungrily at the edges. The crowd erupted, screams, shouts, the clatter of a dropped beer can. The check curled and blackened. The words, $5 million, vanishing into ash that fluttered to the floor like a mockery of snow. Aunt Linda shrieked, clutching her chest. Tom's wife whispered, "My God, he did it." Chloe's smirk returned, sharper now, her eyes gleaming with victory as she leaned into Ethan, whispering, "She deserved that." Emily stood motionless, her face a mask of icy calm, though her heart pounded with a fierce, triumphant thrill. She didn't lunge for the burning paper or beg for mercy. Her eyes locked on her father's, unyielding, as the last embers died. The room was chaos, but she was a storm's eye, untouched by their hysteria, because she knew, the real check was safe, and her family had just played into her hands. Richard's chest heaved, his hands empty, the matchbook discarded on the floor. "You see what you made me do?" he snarled, his voice cracking, as if Emily had forced his hand. Susan sank back onto the couch, her face pale, muttering, "You brought this on yourself." "Emily." Chloe stepped forward, her voice saccharine, her tears conveniently gone. "Maybe now you'll stop being so stubborn," she said, her smile a knife's edge. "You've got nothing left to fight for." Emily's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile, her voice slicing through the noise like a blade. "Dad," she said, her tone so calm it chilled the room. "You just burned a piece of paper. The real check is safe. And it's mine." The silence was deafening, a vacuum sucking the air from the room. Richard's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on land. Susan's glasses fell to her lap, her hands trembling. Chloe's smirk vanished, her eyes wide with disbelief, her voice a shrill squeak. "What? You're lying." Ethan frowned, his confidence wavering, as the crowd's whispers turned to a roar of confusion and shock. Emily turned, her coat rustling as she moved toward the door. her steps deliberate, her heart ablaze with resolve. "You wanted a show," she said, pausing at the threshold, her voice low and lethal. "You got one, but this isn't over." She stepped into the Boise night, the cold air a bomb on her burning anger. The fallout had begun. The next morning, Emily called a friend at the Idaho Statesman, her voice steady as she shared her story anonymously. By noon, the headline hit. Boise father burns $5 million lottery check in rage over daughter's refusal to share with sister. The article spread like wildfire across X hashtags like #lottery betrayal trending nationwide. Strangers raged on her behalf, calling her family greedy and cruel. Though Emily kept their names out. Boise was small, neighbors whispered. Relatives dodged the Thompsons' calls. And Chloe's Instagram perfect life began to crack under the weight of public scorn. Chloe called that evening, her voice a hysterical shriek. "You've ruined us, Emily. Everyone knows. My friends won't even text me back." Emily leaned against her apartment window, the Boise skyline twinkling beyond. Her voice ice cold. "You think Dad burning that check in front of half the neighborhood was meant to stay quiet?" She hung up, her smile fierce. The fake check had been her opening move. The real game was just beginning. The Boise skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of Emily Thompson's office. A constellation of lights that mirrored the fire in her soul. The room, perched above her flagship bookstore in the North End, smelled of fresh coffee and new books. Its shelves lined with hardcovers that whispered stories of triumph. Emily, now 29, sat at a sleek oak desk, her green eyes scanning a spreadsheet of her growing empire. Her $5 million lottery win, safely secured in a bank vault after her family's betrayal, had become the seed of something extraordinary. The fake check her father, Richard, had burned in a fit of rage was a distant memory. But the scars of that night fueled her every move. Outside, a neon sign glowed against the Idaho dusk. Liberty Books, where dreams are honored. It was a beacon, a deliberate jab at the family who'd tried to break her. The past year had been a whirlwind of calculated vengeance and relentless ambition. Emily's heart, once a battlefield of hurt and fury, now pulsed with a fierce, unyielding strength. She'd turned her family's greed into her fuel, their betrayal into her foundation. The Thompsons, Richard, Susan, and their golden child, Chloe, had expected her to crumble when Richard torched the fake check in front of a crowd of relatives and neighbors. Instead, she'd risen, a phoenix from their ashes. And her revenge was a masterpiece painted in success and silence. Blank. Emily's first move had been surgical. After the check-burning spectacle, she'd contacted a friend at the Idaho Statesman, her voice steady as she shared her story anonymously. The headline, Boise father burns $5 million lottery check in rage over daughter's refusal to share with sister, had exploded across X trending with hashtags like #lottery betrayal and #family greed. Strangers across the country raged on her behalf, their comments a tidal wave of support. What kind of father does that? She deserves every penny. Though Emily kept the Thompsons' names out of the article, Boise was a small city. Whispers spread like wildfire, and the family's reputation crumbled. The fallout was swift and brutal. Neighbors stopped waving at Richard and Susan, their usual backyard barbecues replaced by awkward silences. Aunt Linda, once a vocal critic of Emily's selfishness, dodged family gatherings, her pearls no longer glinting with judgment. Chloe, whose Instagram perfect life had been her currency, watched her followers dwindle, her DMs filled with questions. "Is this about your family?" Her best friend, Mia, texted her one night, her words blunt. "Chloe, is it true your dad burned your sister's money?" "That's messed up." Chloe's reply was a frantic call to Emily, her voice shrill with panic. "You've ruined my life," she screamed. Her usual poise shattered. "Everyone's talking about us. Ethan's parents are rethinking the engagement." Emily stood in her tiny apartment then, the Boise skyline a faint glow through her window, her voice cold as ice. "You wanted a public show, Chloe," she said, her words sharp enough to cut. "Dad gave you one when he lit that match. Don't blame me for the consequences." She hung up, her heart pounding not with guilt but with a savage satisfaction. The Thompsons had wanted her money. Now they were paying the price of their greed. Emily's second move was colder, more personal. For years, she'd been the family's invisible lifeline, paying for roof repairs when Richard's pension fell short. covering Susan's prescription costs, even bailing Chloe out when her credit card maxed out on designer bags. No more. The day after the article went viral, Susan called, her voice trembling with a mix of desperation and entitlement. "Emily, we need help," she said, her words rushed, as if speed could erase the past. "The car's acting up, and my meds, please. You've got all that money." Emily leaned against her kitchen counter, the cold granite grounding her as her mother's voice grated on her nerves. "You called me selfish, Mom," she said, her tone even but laced with steel. "You said I wasn't your daughter because I wouldn't give Chloe half. I'm just living up to your expectations." Susan's gasp was audible, followed by a choked sob. "How can you do this to us?" she whispered. "We're your family. Family doesn't demand everything and give nothing." Emily replied, her voice low, final. She hung up, her hands shaking not with doubt but with the weight of her freedom. Richard tried next, his voice a growl through the phone. "You think you can cut us off? After all we've done? You'll regret this." Emily, she didn't flinch. "I've regretted plenty, Dad," she said, "but not this." She blocked his number, the silence that followed louder than his threats. Blank, underscore, blank. With her family's grip severed, Emily turned her winnings into a legacy. She opened Liberty Books, a chain of bookstores that started in Boise's North End, its sign a deliberate middle finger to the Thompsons' home just blocks away. The store was a haven, warm wood shelves, cozy reading nooks, the scent of espresso mingling with ink. She hired locals struggling to make ends meet, hosted book drives for underfunded schools, and turned Liberty into a community heartbeat. Customers flocked, drawn by her story, which had become Boise legend, the girl who'd outsmarted her greedy family. Chloe's life unraveled as Emily's soared. Her lavish wedding plans collapsed when Ethan's parents, horrified by the scandal, pressured him to call it off. "I can't marry into this," he told Chloe, his voice heavy with regret. As she stood in her designer gown, tears smearing her mascara, Chloe called Emily, her voice a broken wail. "You did this," she screamed. "You and your stupid article. Ethan's gone, and it's your fault." Emily, standing in her bookstore's stockroom, surrounded by boxes of new arrivals, felt no pity. "You did this, Chloe," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "You wanted my money, not my love. Live with it." She hung up, the click of the phone a guillotine's fall. Richard and Susan withered under Boise's scorn, their pride too brittle to bend. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid them, their mailbox stuffed with unpaid bills. Susan tried one last plea, cornering Emily outside Liberty Books, her face haggard, her voice trembling. "Emily, please," she whispered, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "We're struggling, just a little help, for old time's sake." Emily looked at her mother, the woman who'd chosen Chloe over her time and again, and felt only a hollow ache where love once lived. "Old times?" she said, her voice soft but unyielding. "You mean when you called me selfish for wanting my own dreams?" "I'm done, Mom, you made your choice." She turned away, the bell above the bookstore door jingling as she stepped inside, leaving Susan alone in the cold. Blank, underscore, blank. A year after the check burning, Emily sat in her office, the Boise skyline a canvas of possibility. She'd hiked Machu Picchu, her boots sinking into ancient stone as she marveled at her own strength. She'd donated to women's shelters, their grateful letters pinned to a corkboard behind her desk. Liberty Books had expanded to 3 locations, each a testament to her resilience. Her phone buzzed. Susan again, her voice a fragile thread. "Emily, I'm sorry," she whispered, tears choking her words. "We were wrong. Can you forgive us?" Emily leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking softly, her gaze drifting to a photo of herself at Machu Picchu, smiling, free. She didn't hate them anymore, but she didn't need them either. "Mom," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I forgave myself for thinking I wasn't enough. That's all I needed. I'm living for me now." She hung up, her heart steady, her smile fierce. The real check had bought her freedom, but her strength had forged an empire. The Thompsons would live with their regret, while Emily Thompson, once invisible, now unstoppable, wrote her own story, one page at a time. If you find the story interesting, please like and share this video and leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to Sweet Revenge and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos.